Welcome to the UFC Vegas post show on the ThreePieceCombo MMA Show, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Johnathan, aka 3Piece Combo, and I'm joined by Mr. Blanco at Blanco Fights. And we just watched UFC Vegas 47, where Sean Strickland defeated Jack Hermansson in a quite uneventful main event. It was a pretty standard. Sean Strickland played his game pretty well, ended up getting a win. It was a split decision, which was very controversial in my opinion. I don't think that was a split by any means possible, or by any means, honestly. I thought it was pretty clear that it was just all Sean Strickland in that fight, but pretty good fight overall. Co-main event, we saw the Nick Diaz prodigy Nick Maximov take on Punahele Soriano on a pretty good fight as well, and there was a lot of good ground scrambles. Soriano seems to hurt his knee somewhere late in that fight, trying to defend a takedown. And from there, it just looked like it was Nick just being able to take the pressure. Shavkat Rakhmonov staying undefeated, 15-0, getting the first round TKO via spinning heel kick. Beautiful spinning heel kick. He landed on the fellow Guyanese, Carlston Harris, falling to 17-5, 2-1 on his UFC run now. But Shavkat remains undefeated. He's knocking on the ranks of trying to get into a ranked fight next. I think that should be what he gets next. We saw Brendan Allen take out Sam Alvey with a beautiful, I believe it was a right-hand left hook that put him down. And when he got him down to the ground, he was able to secure that rear naked choke. And to open, actually, before we opened the card, Bryan was able to battle past some little bit of adversity with that swollen right eye and able to actually get the win over Tresean Gore, which was a little bit surprising, but given the way that Gore fought tonight, it was really understanding to see why he got that one battle. Kind of just what we talked about in that pre-fight. He fought like a veteran. He did everything that needed to be done, and he ended up getting the win. And to begin the fight of the card, Julian Erosa, and probably a fight of the night versus Steven Peterson. Peterson missed weight, so Erosa's going to get that full 100K if that is a fight of the night. But that was probably the best fight of the card so far, followed by some amazing prelims as well. So let's get right into it, and let's start with this main event. Sean Strickland using his effective defense, keeping the striking away from Jack Hermansson, making Jack miss a lot. Like, Jack was swinging at air for most of the fight. Sean was really effective with his jab for most of the fight. And like I said, it ended up being a split decision, but I thought it was a pretty clear win for Sean Strickland. What were your thoughts on that main event?
Well, I mean, it was a decisive win for Sean Strickland.
One second, bro. I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to shout out and give some love to my boy Royal A. Shepard. I don't know shit about combat sports.
499.
We got a dono, baby.
Let's go.
You know we're gonna share this. We're gonna split this $2.99. You know what I mean? We're gonna get ourselves some papers. You know how it roll. Don't spend it all in one place, Royal. I appreciate you, bro. That means a lot to me. That you even would do this for me really means a lot. So thank you, Royal, for just even watching, but for donating as well. But back to you, Mr. Blanco. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, shout out for that. You know, we better grub tonight. Woo. But no, that was a decisive win. I mean, split decision. Bro, I don't even know what he was looking. I don't even know what Sal D'Amato was looking at. And he's a respectable judge. He's like one of the more respectable judges. So it was weird that he gave it to Hermansson. But that's beyond the point. I mean, Sean Strickland uncharacteristically fought patient, but he controlled the fight with his jab. I think he has the best jab in the middleweight division. Like, after watching this, I mean, it's just so fast. It's so smooth. It's so quick. And his head movement's really like, it doesn't look fast, but it's like he gets out right in the right range, so that way he's able to counter. And he looked really good. But what I was really more impressed with was his takedown defense. I mean, Jack Hermansson really tried to, implement his wrestling game, but he just couldn't take Sean Strickland down. And I think that, it was overall, even though it wasn't the most exciting performance, I think it showed how much Sean Strickland grew as a fighter.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, like you said, when you're facing somebody with such high level of grappling like Jack Hermansson, I mean, he took down Kelvin Gastelum, who fought for the interim title, and was able to pretty much heel hook him in the first round before that fight even got started. So you're going against a very dangerous grappler, a guy that can take you down to the ground, somebody who's good at just getting that transitions, good ground and pound as well. And to your point, Sean Strickland's takedown defense was phenomenal. He was able to keep Jack backing up, which always makes it harder for a wrestler to get that takedown anyways. But even when Hermansson was backing up Sean to the front and or backing him up to the cage, he was able to, shave off those takedowns, get those underhooks, stop Jack from locking his hands and actually getting under his hips. And even I think he got one, but even if he got that one down, he bounced right up immediately. So it wasn't even to any effectiveness for Hermanson. But Sean Strickland, like you said, really showed a lot of growth in this fight and is putting himself as maybe the next guy up that could fight for the title, right? I don't think he's gonna or is deserving of that title shot just yet. I feel like he has to do a lot more there. But like what they mentioned on the broadcast, Adesanya, and I love I love you, bro. He doesn't have the best jab. Adesanya for sure has the best jab. So let's keep it right where let's keep it 100. But Adesanya's been lapping everybody. There are very few people that he hasn't fought yet at 185. Darren Till, Jaron Cannonier, and those guys haven't really separated themselves from the pack, via Robert Whitaker putting them down whenever they were putting up to that fight. So Sean Strickland is going to be in a position to fight for that number one contendership next. I think whoever he does fight next, that's probably going to be a title eliminator fight. So there's a couple options for him there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and I'm going to pull up the rankings as you go ahead and speak. Who do you think Sean Strickland should fight next?
Well, we can agree or disagree about the jab, but that's okay. That's all. It's all love over here. But I really think, I would say the loser of Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson. Because I truly believe that the winner of Cannonier and Brunson will, get that title shot, and they're more deserving of that title shot. And then the loser, I think Sean Strickland would fit perfectly for that next fight. Just to go up in ranking for the fight, and also to fight another high level fighter. Because he's just his star power has just started going up after the Uriah Hall fight. So another high profile fight and another high profile victory will guarantee him a title shot.
Yeah, and I think to your point, that would be a really good fight for him, regardless of who wins that fight, whether it's Jared Cannonier or whether it's Derek Brunson. Both of those guys are veterans in the 185-pound division that offer different threats for Sean Strickland, right? Jared Cannonier, this is a guy that came down from heavyweight, and he has a really, really good chin, and he's not really too afraid of getting hit and giving some of that power back. So, Sean Strickland is going to have a little bit of a different test as far as facing that kind of power. And then when you look at Derek Brunson, first of all, Blonde Brunson is a different player, right? This guy has been really, really good, mixing up the striking and the wrestling as well. The fights that he has had, guys, I'm trying to remember the guy that he just absolutely destroyed, Edmund Shabazian, absolutely destroyed Edmund Shabazian. And he was also able to get wins over Kevin Holland and Darren Till as well. So Derek Brunson has been on a really, really good tear. Royal saying, I agree with Johan about the jab, but then again, I have no idea who either of those guys are. I just wanted to disagree with Johnathan. Appreciate you, bro. Like I said, it's all love. But when it comes to Derek Brunson, that takedown or that wrestling ability is a lot higher, and it's on another level than what we saw from Jack Hermanson tonight. So I think that threat would be a lot higher. I think you'd see him, using his strikes to set up his wrestling a little bit better. I like Jack Hermanson. He's a good fighter, but a lot of his punches are looping. A lot of his punches are very telegraphed, and he was very easy to make him miss if you're Sean Strickland. But if you have somebody, like I said, with the power and precision of Jared Cannonier, if you're fighting somebody with the wrestling ability and the ability just to mix it up and be very diverse in his fighting, like Derek Brunson, it's a very different challenge for him there. So either one of those guys, I think that's the perfect matchup. There's a couple guys. If you look at Marvin Vettori, he just beat Paulo Costa. Maybe Marvin Vettori, takes on Sean Strickland because Marvin 2 fights ago beat Jack Hermanson in a fight that he took on short notice. So that could be a fight. Both of those guys are kind of sitting around. Paulo Costa, I don't think he has a fight just yet, but he's in the mix as well. So a couple of names there that could be thrown around in that division. But any final thoughts on this main event before we move on to the rest of the card?
Marvin Vettori, Sean Strickland fight does sound pretty interesting. They do throw a lot of high volume, and it's very high paced. Like, that would be a really entertaining fight, I would believe, on paper at least. Because I thought this was going to be an entertaining fight, but it was more just decisive. It was more Sean Strickland showing his prowess. But overall, I think that Sean Strickland got the job done. He went up in level against another high-ranked level fighter, and as I think 2021, you might see his stock rise. This might be his breakout year. If he's starting out the year, decisively winning against Jack Hermanson, and if he does it again against another top-ranked opponent, this might be his breakout year.
You're absolutely right. When it comes down to it, he's just now starting to get into that actual contention. So this is the point when you want to start making runs. When you're, when you're unranked and you take an L, sure, it might stop you from taking that next step to actually getting into a ranked contention. But when you're a ranked fighter and you take an L and you have to drop down and fight another ranked fighter, somebody who's hungry, somebody who's on the come up, it's a lot different story. Like now you're going to have to face guys that are actual monsters, guys that have been around for a while, guys that know how to win, not guys that just don't know how to use their skills, but guys know how to use their skills, put it together, and secure actual wins. I mean, if you look at, not to compare any of these guys to GSP, but because GSP was a champion for so long, he learned how to not lose fights. And when you're in contention for so long, when you're a ranked fighter for so long, you learn how to not lose fights, keep yourself safe, do these things better than fighters that are unranked. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Sean Strickland does. I think he does have the potential to continue to move up in this division, given the fact that this is a very striking heavy division, right? Outside of Brunson and outside of Hermanson, who he fought tonight, those are really two of the main ground threats. Like outside of that, Paulo Costa, heavy striker. Vittori is a good ground fighter, but completely neutralized against Adesanya and has shown that he can be a neutralized fighter. Also, not really that great on the striking as well. Paul, a couple just Marvin or Derek Brunson, right? Good striker as well, solid wrestling, but not relying on the ground game. So this is one of those divisions where you don't have to have a crazy amount of takedown defense to make it to the top, because you can just find yourself in a lot of favorable matchups. Now let's get into this co-main event, because we did see. I thought this was a really good fight. Typically, I'm not not super huge on ground scrambles, but this was a fight that was really, really fun. We saw high level wrestling from both guys, a lot of switches, a lot of reversals, a good amount of striking from Soriano, and a good amount of grappling from Maximov. At the end, like I said, Maximov was able to pull it off. It was a very close fight. I felt like round one went to Maximov, I think, or no, round one might have went to Soriano, and then 2 and 3 went to Maximov because he was able to kind of neutralize the stand-up game and just push up on Soriano for most the entire fight. But I want to give him a little bit of credit too, because there was a brutal knee that he ate in the first round that he was able to stand up against. And this guy, you can see the Diaz blood kind of flowing through him a little bit. And we even got a Nate Diaz smile at the end of it, which we don't usually see. Talk to me about what you saw from Nick Maximov in his fight against Punahele Soriano.
Yeah, he definitely comes from that camp. I mean, relentless on the takedowns. I mean, the Diaz brothers are not really known for their takedowns, but they're known for their ground game. But he's an aggressive fighter when it comes to grappling. I mean, he was on his back. He was on Soriano's back for the longest time, and he just stayed so composed. He was the hand fighting. It was like a game of chess. Like that hand fighting was. I was like paying so much detail to that because I was like, is he gonna get this rear naked choke? Like he was fighting for that for a while, but just overall, I was pretty impressed. I mean, granted, Soriano did look like he injured his knee. I think it was in round 2 that he injured it, or round 3. Either way, I mean, he was able to neutralize that. Just control him on the ground. Make sure the majority of the fight he was in good position, in good top position, actively trying to look for submissions, actively trying to finish the fight. And overall, I think that's why he got the decision.
Yeah, you're definitely right, right? The control of what he had to fight really just edged it out. There wasn't really necessarily much damage landed between many of those guys, right? Punahele, like we said, in the first round was able to get that knee, a couple of punches here and there, but outside of that, it was Maximov just pressing up against him, putting all that weight against him, and laying, Punahele was on his back or on his hip, just punching at the body of him. So not much damage on either way, but when it comes down to the control, Nick Maximov was able to control this fight for the entire duration, and he's continuing to show his development and continuing to show his growth. Now, looking at the unofficial middleweight rankings, they had Soriano at roughly around 25, and there's a couple of interesting matchups right above him that I'm going to pull up right now. One being Gerald Mearshart, who has coming off of a good win himself. He actually was winning 3 on a row, as you can see right here, over Dustin Stoltzfus, Muradov, and then Fabinski. So that might be an interesting matchup. We also have Ian Heinisch, a guy who was almost ranked as well. Somebody who was actually, I think he was ranked number 11 about a year ago, and he lost a couple of fights, now falling down onto the young rank. This is a guy who knows how to wrestle. This is a guy who knows how to strike. It's a very interesting matchup for Nick Maximov. So of those couple of guys, I'm going to pull it up right here. Which one do you think? Like I said, Ian Heinisch, you got Gerald Mearshart. even Edmund Shabazian, who's taking 3 L's in a row. So who do you think which would match up well with Maximov?
I'm looking at this ranking, and I know he has a fight coming up, but I want to see what he can do against a guy like Dricus du Plessis. I mean, striker versus grappler matchup. I'm a big fan of those, a contrast in styles. But Dricus du Plessis, even though he's outside of the top 15, he has one of the best kickboxing stand-up fights. Like, he's one of the best stand-up fighters in the middleweight division. Like, he's rising up the ranks. Like, seeing how Maximov will handle like an elite striker, and how du Plessis would handle a high level wrestler, grappler. It would be really interesting to see that matchup to me.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Those contrasting styles is going to be very interesting for him because Maximov is a guy that's so heavily relies on his grappling. We need to see if his grappling gets neutralized or if he's not able to actually get down, get close to you, grab a hold of your hips. What is going to happen then, right? When he's forced to stand up and against a guy that's able to break away from you and create a little bit of space, what's going to happen? Because this, like I said, is a 185-pound division. The top heavy is very, very good strikers who is good at avoiding wrestling. So we're going to have to see a little bit of development from Maximov before we see him moving forward. But I think a couple of those options are pretty good for him. And I think he does, if he continues to develop the skills, which I do believe he will, especially coming out of that Diaz camp, I think he does have the potential to be a good fighter. But his ceiling right now, in my opinion, is a little bit questionable just because of the striking. I'm not sure how far he can go, relying just so heavily on that grappling. Any final thoughts on this fight before we move on to the very, very, intriguing prospect in Rakhmonov?
Yeah, I think that it was a win. He got the win. It wasn't the best performance for him, but this is every fight's a learning lesson. He can learn something from this. Obviously his stand up needs to be he needs to improve that. If he wants to be big in the middleweight division, his stand up has to be better. Like you said, we've reiterated it like hundreds of times at this point on this show right today, that the middleweight division is very striker heavy. So if you don't have a good striking base in that division, it's going to be hard to win favorable matchups.
Yeah, he's gonna have to definitely grow as a fighter, but somebody who doesn't really seem to need to have to grow too much. Shavkat Rakhmonov defeating Carlston Harris with a beautiful spinning heel kick. It didn't even land flush, but it didn't even need to because it put him on his ass, and then he was able to land some beautiful, picture perfect ground and pound right on the chin of Carlston Harris. And I don't want to just gloss over that because being able to land a shot from the top perfectly on the chin is very hard when you have somebody on the bottom who's squirming, who's good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu like Carlston Harris is. You don't want to put yourself in any bad position, but Rakhmonov was able to do it. He was able to stay undefeated. He's 15-0 right now, and he was able, like I said, put Carlston Harris away with a beautiful spinning heel kick. Take away on your thoughts on this amazing fight by Rakhmonov.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know, bro. I can't even fathom what I watched with him. Like, he's just so smooth. Like, I've said it like on, I think it was Wednesday we had the pre-fight. Like, he's just so smooth. Like, he's so seamless with everything. And like, to be that long and to be that creative as a striker and have, a complete ground game. I'm surprised that he fights like he's a top ranked fighter already, but he's a prospect, but he's about to break into the top 15. And just watch out, 170. There's a new contender on the rise, and he's a dangerous matchup for anybody.
Yeah, man. You talk about the divisions that just have threats coming up. You got the 170-pound division, and granted, we don't know where Hamzat Chimaev is going to be, but you got Hamzat Chimaev, you got Shavkat Rakhmonov. Man, we got some real killers in this 170-pound division. I hope Kamaru Usman does stay champion for a little bit longer because I'd love to see him take on some of these younger, new-bred athletes that are coming up. But Rakhmonov, like I said, in the 170-pound division, is in a pretty good position at 15-0. When you're undefeated, you kind of put yourself in a good position just having that name for you. We saw what we did for Paulo Costa, able to securing that Adesanya fight a little bit sooner just because he had that undefeated record and they wanted to put that together. So looking at, who he has in front of him, unofficially he's ranked roughly around 22. Looking at some guys, you got Jeff Neal, who officially is ranked number 14. unofficially looking at round 16. Santiago Ponzinibbio is another guy as well. Li Jingliang, even Nate Diaz, although they're not going to feed Nate Diaz to Shavkat. We all know that as well. But who do you think would be the next good matchup for him as well? Because like we said, man, this guy has to get a ranked fight next at 15-0. And what we saw tonight, he's too good not to be ranked.
It's interesting because ideally you want him to have a fight against someone from 11 to 15, but 11 to 15 are where like the top prospects are at, and you don't want to put. Do you really want to put prospect? I don't think they're going to put prospect versus prospect. I mean, you can put him against Jeff Neal, you can put him against Li Jingliang. I mean, those are probably the two ideal fights for him. Because do you want to put him against Muslim Sakyov like that? That would be interesting. I would love to watch that fight. That fight would be that fight right there. I would headline that for a fight night. But
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this welterweight division is stacked, and like it's hard because if you book a fight, like one prospect is going to go down, which is understandable. That's the nature of the beast. But there's just so many like interesting matchups that could happen with Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I think if I had to pick one, I would go Li Jingliang. I'd go Li Jingliang. Li Jingliang is a strong guy. He has a pretty good striking game, and getting a win over just any top 15 guy will look so good for him, because he already looks beyond impressive in his run in the UFC right now.
See, I would agree with you, but only one thing, I would not want to. I would feel so bad for Lee. You just face Hamzat, and now you got to face Shavkat. That's a little bit bad. I say give him Santiago Ponzinibbio. Another guy who's dangerous submission artist. Strike up is also dangerous. Obviously coming back from this injury, he's not been the same fighter that he was previously. It's unfortunate, but it's part of the game. I think that's a good matchup for him, because if he takes that, at least Shavkat gets a name under his belt, a guy that was, formerly ranked very, very high. And then after that, you can set him up to rank, fight the top 10. You can set him up with somebody like Steven Thompson, like I said, Neil Magny, a couple of good guys in there as well. So I'm thinking maybe Santiago Ponzinibbio. I think that's a fun fight, just because of skills-wise, it just matches up so beautifully.
That's a good one too. I'm seeing right under Santiago Ponzinibbio, Daniel Rodriguez. That could be an interesting matchup too. He's been on a roll. His fight. I was really impressed with his fight against Kevin Lee. So that could be another matchup. Maybe a fight against them, and possibly they can break into the top 15. That would be interesting as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting for sure. The only thing with that is, man, D-Rod is. He's already gone through so many fights where he's the underdog, because he came in, he took a fight short notice. He took on Mike Perry. I think that fight was short notice. Like, he took on a couple of fights short notice. So, you kind of want to do him a little bit of favors. I think you don't want to do that to D-Rod, but that would be, as far as fights go, man, D-Rod is heavy-handed. We saw that his takedown defense is absolutely stout. Like, he's really good at not getting takedown. So that would be a beautiful matchup. So I agree with you there for sure. Now let's get into the next fight that happened. Earlier before that, we saw Brendan Allen destroy smiling Sam Alvey, and I saw him come into the ring, and he had the smile. He was coming out like normal, and I was thinking to myself, man, why is he doing this to himself? I feel like every time Sam Alvey comes out, especially recently, he's coming out to get fed to somebody. And now, of course, the last of his couple losses have come by split decision, and he's had some complaints with the referees and the judging, which is absolutely called for, as we saw tonight. But still, 0-4-1 in his last 5 coming into tonight. Now, 0-5-1 in his last 6. Before we touch on Brendan Allen, because we definitely want to get to how skilled and how beautiful this fight was for him, and he's still a young fighter that's continuing to grow. Is this the end of the line for Sam Alvey? Like, should this be it for him?
In the UFC or in his fighting career?
UFC.
Definitely. He's gotten enough chance. He's gotten plenty of chances, and Dana has kept him on because he is, a household name, and he tries to put on entertaining fights. But at some point, the UFC is the premier organization, and you want the top fighters in the league. And if you haven't had a win since, 2017, 2018 or something like that, what was it? what was it, 2018. I mean, it's hard to keep you around at this point. So I mean, yeah, I think now this we might have seen the last fight in the UFC for Sam Alvey.
Absolutely, man. I think it's a little bit past time. You know what I mean? For him, the skills are there, right? Obviously, he's a veteran of the sport. The knockout power, he's had it before. Those hooks are dangerous. Like as we saw tonight, he was able to hurt Brendan Allen at some points in this fight, but he's just not able to do it consistently. He's one of those guys that, as these new age fighters have come, he's kind of phased out a little bit. He's not able to hang with these guys that are super athletic, like we see tonight. But let's get into Brendan Allen, man. In that first round, it was a little tough going. You know, it was a back and forth. But at the end, when he got into the second round, he was able to put Sam Alvey down, get behind that neck, and he didn't even need to get the hooks in. He just was able to choke him out. And from there, that was it. Beautiful rear naked choke, just arms, no legs. What were your thoughts on Brendan Allen's performance, and where do you think he goes from here as far as future-wise? Because, like I said, only 26 years old. He's still pretty young.
And naturally, he's a middleweight, so it's interesting. This was his light heavyweight debut. I mean, he took this fight on short notice, and he looked pretty impressive. But I mean, overall, I think it was an impressive performance, especially the fact that he took this fight on short notice, and that rear naked choke was tight. Like the sheer pressure, I thought I was passing out. Like that's how tight it looked, and I mean, it was an impressive performance. I don't know where he goes because I think this fight was bumped up to 205 just because it was so short notice.
Correct.
So is he going to stay at 185, or do you want to, test the waters and fight at light heavyweight? He has options. I mean, he did win his light heavyweight debut technically. So, I mean, he has options, but the more likely scenario is that he's going to stay at middleweight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he does stay at middleweight. I think that's the division for him. I mean, when you go to light heavyweight, that's a 20-pound difference from 185, right? And coming on short notice, it's okay for you to come in and have to step up just on that short notice fight because Sam Alvey is a guy who's also fought at 185. He's bounced around from those two divisions. But when you're talking about true 205ers, I mean, these are guys that cut from 220 pounds, 205. I mean, you got Paulo Costa fighting at 185. You got guys like Yuri Prohaska fighting at 205. I don't think that's the division for Brendan Allen. I think, like you said, he keeps it here at middleweight. Looking at these, looking at the rankings around him, unofficially he's ranked around 15. Obviously that's not accurate, but unofficially that's where he's at unofficially. A couple of guys around him that he's able, maybe Chris Weidman. You throw him a guy who's a former champ, somebody who has really good wrestling, somebody who was just overall a pretty solid fighter and a veteran fighter who's able to be very diverse in the cage. Obviously, we know that injury is going to keep him out for a little bit longer, but I'm not sure how much longer. So that would be an interesting matchup. Edmund Shabazian, we talked about it already. The guy that wanted to be the youngest champion, but unfortunately that didn't work out for him. But Brendan Allen is a guy who's continuing to develop his skills, not somebody who was overhyped coming in. Maybe that's something you see. Maybe even a Brad Tavares, guy who just super skilled overall, very good stand-up, very good on the wrestling. Somebody who's able to do this as well. So, maybe out of those guys, or maybe somebody I'm not thinking of, who do you think matches up well with Brendan Allen for his next fight?
I definitely think it should be like a veteran. I do believe that. So someone like Chris Weidman, who is a former champion, past his prime, but still has a little bit in the tank. I don't know how he will be after that leg injury. I don't know how he'll fight stylistically because track record shows you're never the same after breaking your leg. Edmund Shabazian, I don't even want to talk about him, man. He needs to switch camps. Like I don't even want to deal with that. But I think a guy like either Brad Tavares or Krzysztof Jotko will probably be the next best thing for him because, I mean, if he's going back to middleweight, technically he's coming off a loss in the middleweight division. So bouncing back against a veteran could put him back in the rankings. If he's not already a top 15 fighter, he'll be in the top 15.
That's an excellent point, right? Because Chris Action Man Curtis put him out, and he was favored in that fight, right? Brendan Allen was favored to beat Mr. Curtis, and he actually was able to get the win. So that's a good point there. Put him with against somebody who's working their way up as well, somebody who's maybe on a streak in the middleweight division. That way you can see and test the true waters of what he's at, making that 185, right? Making a true cut, making it all the way down there. Any final thoughts on this Brendan Allen fight before we move on to the next one?
Nah, man, I was just really impressed, man. I definitely think he should be in consideration for performance of the night, just based on off circumstance itself. I mean, going in on short notice, being bumped up to 205 because he was not able to be cut. He was not able to cut weight, and getting the rear naked choke without even securing any hooks. And that was a tight submission, man. That was really tight. Like I said, I almost passed out myself. So I mean, I think it was an impressive performance. I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does next.
Like one of those guys, and this is the beauty of the UFC. Like I love boxing, but with UFC, it's okay to take some losses and bounce back. And you saw guys like Jan Blachowicz, a guy who lost 4 in a row. His career was almost on the line, came back, won a title. You don't typically see that. And then you look at Glover Teixeira, a guy who was fighting for the title. What was it, 7 years ago? Goes through ups and downs, and is able to get back to the top. And at 41 years old, win the championship. Like, this is why the UFC is so amazing, because you can continue to fight. You can take some losses. You can take them on the shoulder, even go to the regional scene, come back, make yourself known, and come back and make yourself a champion. So that's something great. And somebody who's fought through a lot of adversity, the last pick in the Ultimate Fighter, Bryan Battle, defeating Tresean Gore via decision. This was a fight that was very unexpected for me. And we talked about this fight. We broke this fight down in our pre-fight, how Bryan Battle fights like a veteran, and he was able to do that tonight because Tresean Gore, we saw when he lets his hands go, he is dangerous. This man has absolute power. You could tell the power in the fight. The difference was Tresean was not willing to let his hands go. We almost saw kind of what we saw in Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou, where he's just very patient, a little too much to his fault, right? Talking a little bit too much in between rounds. And Bryan Battle was able to hold it off, even with the eye swelling, even with the getting knocked down almost twice in the second round. He was able to get it done. And unofficially, now officially, the Ultimate Fighter champion, with no questions asked, right? Nobody can question it. Nobody can do anything about it. Bryan Battle is a champion, and he showed it tonight, and he looked in phenomenal shape as well. So, what were your thoughts on the true Ultimate Fighter finale?
This was a pretty entertaining fight. I would say so myself. I mean, Bryan Battle, implemented his game plan. I mean, he implemented a game plan that he had throughout the Ultimate Fighter, and that, people who watch the Ultimate Fighter know him for. I mean, he threw high volumes and he started out strong. That's one thing that I definitely think he should have done, because I think him starting out strong kind of messed up, the rhythm of Tresean Gore. Granted, Tresean Gore, I think, had the more significant strikes, but the output is what won Bryan Battle this fight. As for Tresean Gore, man, he like I said already, that he comes from the Douglas Lena camp, and he definitely fights like he's a Lima, because he is overly patient, too patient, and sometimes like it doesn't work for you. Like, you have the significant power advantage and you have the significant striking advantage, but you not being able to set up even combos, and you're too patient when you're picking shots. It was detrimental to your own fight, because if he was a little bit more aggressive, we would have been talking about Tresean Gore being the winner. But if we're being honest, I mean, he shut Bryan Battle's eye in the second round, and Bryan Battle was, you could see like something mentally like click with Bryan Battle once he got clipped with one of Tresean's overhand hooks. So I mean, it was a very entertaining fight. I think it was a smart game plan from Bryan Battle. I mean, just it was really hard. I mean, because the strength advantage came from Tresean Gore, and he had to overcome that. He had to overcome a lot of punishment. But he has a gas tank too. He looked a lot fitter than in the Ultimate Fighter finale, and he looked like he was in great shape, and he deserved that win.
He absolutely deserved that win. He showed tonight why he's the Ultimate Fighter winner. And we see with these guys that get picked last, they tend to do very, very well. I mean, I believe Kelvin Gastelum was another guy who was picked last and was able to make it all the way. I mean, knocking out Michael Bisping via, albeit at the end of his career, but making it all the way to the title fight with Adesanya and putting on a fight of the year contender, where it was a very, very close fight against my personal favorite fighter. But Bryan Battle is coming in, and you're starting to see he puts he's putting all the tools together. And when you have the ability to use your cardio as a weapon, and the ability to mix up fights and use your opponent's weaknesses as your strengths, even if that not may be your strength, it just shows that you can be malleable as a fighter And then when you're in this division, it's super, super important because you can't be too one-dimensional in the UFC. You need to be able to be adaptable. You need to be able to adapt to, like, let's, with Tresean Gore, putting him on the back foot, making him, have to withstand a lot of volume, making him think a lot, not allowing him to throw more than one shot at a time. Bryan Battle came out with an excellent game plan. Sure, he got caught a couple of times. We all knew Tresean Gore had the power advantage. We knew that if he hits him, he's gonna hurt. And Bryan Battle definitely got hurt a couple times in this fight, twice in the second round. But Bryan came out and he was able to finish strong in the third round, even with the eye shut out. And we both called Tresean Gore winning in this fight. I definitely wanted him to win as well. And it seemed once that eye closed up, hey, when half this guy's sight is gone, might be a little bit easier to throw some more volume. Tresean refused to throw that volume, and that was the detriment to him. But give a huge credit to Bryan Battle. Phenomenal fight for him. Any final thoughts on the Ultimate Fighter Championship before we move on to this next fight?
Yeah, man, I'm just looking forward to what's next for Bryan Battle, because now, and technically, this Ultimate Fighter phase of his career is over. Like, he doesn't have to deal with that no more. He won the actual finale, and then he won the people's finale. So now we can get on with his career, and he can move up, try to go up the ranks and stuff like now. Because even though you're the Ultimate Fighter winner, it's a long road up. The Ultimate Fighter is not as impactful as it used to be. So he has a long road ahead if he wants to be UFC champion.
Yeah, back when the Ultimate Fighter first came out, when you became the Ultimate Fighter champion, you were that dude, right? And I mean, it's a lot different now because you're getting guys signed from Dana White's Contender Series, and it's not the same because there's just so many more contenders. You're seeing so many more regional fights, right? You got like PFL, you got Bellator, you got One Championship, you got CFFC, you're just so, Titan FC. There's so many promotions out there that you can go out there and make a name. The Ultimate Fighter isn't necessarily the end-all, be-all to make it and get to the UFC now. Don't get me wrong. That six-figure contract and getting that is nice because a lot of fighters don't even make that kind of money. But at the end of the day, you're still going to have to make your name for yourself, and that's what Bryan Battle did. He came out tonight, and he made a name for himself, and he beat a guy who was undefeated. So let's put a little feather in your cap there for that as well. Let's get to the opener for this card, man. Julian Erosa versus Steven Peterson, winning via decision. I believe it was a split decision. But what a beautiful fight, right? Julian Erosa, super unorthodox fighter, a guy who comes in with his hands down, kind of pop shots you, throws him from weird angles, and Steven Peterson with just a lot of power. And we saw it in the Chase Hooper fight. This guy, when he lands with any of those looping punches, he can hurt you. And in this fight, we saw exactly that, right? In the first round, it was pretty much all Erosa. He was able to walk down Peterson. He was switching stances a lot, and he was able to counter-strike Peterson because Peterson was throwing just one at a time. So whenever he would throw to one, Erosa would slip him and kind of just go back into it. But going into the second round, the right hand of Peterson just right down over the top was able to hurt him a lot. And like I said, Erosa fights with his hands down and very low, kind of like Dominic Cruz-ish, where he just kind of walks down, weird wonky angles. But he doesn't have the same type of movement as Dominic Cruz. So that right hand down the middle was just hurting Julian Erosa. And in that second round, it was, I think, 2 or 3 of them that was able to get him down. He actually hurt him, able to get him out, almost able to get him out. But Erosa hit a beautiful spinning back fist that dropped Peterson, pretty much neutralized the damage that was going in that round. But going into the third round, it was 1-1. Peterson was hitting him with another right over the top, but Erosa was actually able to get the takedown, so it made the fight a little bit closer. The numbers were super close, but split decision, getting it to Erosa. First of all, did you think it was a correct decision for Erosa? And number 2, what were your thoughts on the fight?
Yeah, okay, so I know that in the pre-fight, I did have Peterson winning, and you had Erosa winning. Yeah, my boy Jonah flexing, appreciated my boy, but yeah, I definitely I think Julian Erosa won, and I think that he just looked just a bit better than Steven Peterson in the stand-up game. He looked a little more polished and slick, and I think that Steven Peterson was just a bit overly aggressive, and that was to his detriment because I think him being overly aggressive, resulted in him getting caught with a spinning back fist. So overall, it was just a really entertaining fight. I mean, they both shedded blood. It was a great way to start out the main card. The output was crazy. It was insane. Both throwing over 100 or 200 strikes. It was really good. But man, I just wish I wish Steven Peterson won. I'm not gonna lie. I just want.
Yeah, I do too. It was a pretty close fight, so it was really really like you said, just interesting. The strike count was Julian Rosa landed 155, and Steven Peterson landed 148. Numbers wise, actually, let me throw the numbers up here. And I do definitely want to get to your boy's comment. Jonah asking about Stylebender versus Whitaker, and Elder Assassin as well, saying do a video for the next card, and a great card. Very excited.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a breakdown video. We'll probably record it to Monday night and drop it Tuesday. But we're gonna break down Adesanya versus Whitaker. We also got Brunson versus Cannonier on that card. Kyler Phillips is fighting on that card as well. Nasruddin Imavov is fighting on that card. It's a phenomenal card. We're gonna break it all down. We're gonna get a little more technical with that one, and we'll go from there. Oh, my boy Royal A. Shepherd again. I appreciate you. Continue. You were up for 40 minutes with us, man. I really do appreciate you. For the 999 dono, I still don't know what's going on. LOL. You boys are speaking French right now. I'm going to bed. Good shit, fellas. Hey, Royal, I appreciate you, my man. Thank you for staying up with me. Thank you for watching, and thanks again for the dono. We're going to be enjoying this one. Very, very good after Ethan takes most of that money. But as far as the first fight, man, like you said, fight, very, very good fight. The output, almost 300 strikes landed combined. We're definitely going to do a video for that next card. We're going to do a pre-fight video midweek, breaking down our picks and our predictions, and then we're going to do a post-fight video for UFC with Adesanya as well. So, we're going to definitely do that. But any final thoughts on this, the opener for this card before we play our game? Guess the bonus.
Just a really entertaining opener. I mean, it was a great way to start the card. I mean, granted, the card wasn't. It was in the middle. So if I had to rate it 1 out of 10, it was a 5. But this was definitely an 8 in terms of entertainment value.
Yeah, for sure. It was a very fun card overall. Elder Assassin say my boy Black Beast is fighting. That's right. We got a lot of good fights, man. These fights are coming up fast and steady. Like once tonight's fight came on, I knew we were going to be on a roll because I felt like we had a little extra off. But now we're back on it. But we're going to definitely tear up that Israel Adesanya card. I mean, he's my favorite fighter. And Robert Whitaker, don't underestimate what he's able to do as well. Like, I'm scared shitless of this guy. As an Adesanya fan, this guy has taken his wrestling to another level. He's continuing to develop as a striker. We saw what he's able to do with everybody. We talked about being malleable. This is a guy who was a former champion, a guy who knows how to win. This is a guy who's very, very dangerous, and we've shown that he's undeniable for making himself the contender to fight for Adesanya next. So let's get into it. Before we get into the prelims, I just want to talk about a little bit. Let's play our favorite game. Let's play Guess the Bonus. Now, tonight, we had 2 performance awards, 2 performance bonuses, and then we had 1 fight of the night. One of the performances bonuses were on the prelims, so I'll let you take a guess there. But go ahead, my man. Guess the bonus.
So we're gonna go with. You said one of them's on the prelims, right? The performance.
Yeah, 1 performance on the prelims, and then you got a performance in the fight of the night on the main card.
All right, so the performance is Chidi and Joe Kawani. I mean, 16 seconds. It has to be.
Yeah.
There's no other person. And then the other one, and you said the other one was on the main card.
The other 2, yeah. Other performance on the main card, and then
the fight of the night. Okay, so performance. I mean, Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, dude hit a spinning wheel kick, and he didn't even connect completely, but he had power on that. He had torque, and it was so fast. And he made Carlston go limp. Performance of the night, right there, the top performance of the night. And then fight of the night is the opener, man. It has to be the opener. I mean, the other fights on the main card could not live up to that. It has to be that.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, you shot 100%, my man. This is the first night you shot 100%. So that boy is out here killing it. So good stuff with that one. I do want to recap some of these prelim fights before we close out the show. The featured prelim was actually a very good fight between Miles Johns and John Castaneda. Castaneda, Sexy Mexi, was able to keep the pressure on Miles John for most of the fight. We know Miles Johns has that power, and he's able to put you out, but Castaneda was able to just make him miss, put him on the back foot, pressure him, And once he was able to get that pressure, he put him down, and then he was able to get a beautiful choke as well. So beautiful job by Castaneda. It was actually a head and arm choke that pulled Miles Johns out. Hakeem Dawodu, beautiful, beautiful fight as well. Coming back off of a loss against a very tough fighter in Movsar Evloev. Tough, coming back, getting a beautiful decision win. It would be exciting to see him because he's a very good fighter at featherweight. So it's going to be curious to see where he goes from here. Chitty, Bang Bang, Jakuani, man, 15 seconds to get a knockout. I don't think I need to say more than that. It was a beautiful, I think it was a left hook, right hand over the top that just put him out. And that's all she wrote. It was really all she wrote. Alexis Davis and Julia Stoliarenko, that was actually a very, very good fight. That was a bloody fight. They ended up beating each other up. At the end of the day, Alexis Davis was able to get the win. Halton Almeida with a beautiful knockout in the first round over Marquez. We talked about, or we didn't get to talk about, but do want to give a shout out to Philip Rowe getting the win over Jason Witt. I actually got to meet Philip in person at the PFL event and at the Florida Mall. So appreciate you being kind to me. But yeah, shout out to the boy Philip Rowe, the Fresh Prince, and then Malcolm Gordon. Very interesting fight in that first round. It was actually a TKO stoppage via not doctor, but because of an injury. But Malcolm X Gordon was able to get the win as well. But it was overall, I thought it was a pretty good fight night. We had a couple of finishes. Let me see what we had. We had actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 finishes. That's a pretty good card overall. I'm gonna grade this card a 7.3 out of 10. Not too many bangers, right? There was 2 bangers. I felt like there was, like I said, the Miles John fight was a pretty good fight, and then the Arosa Peterson fight was a really good fight. Outside of that, there was a lot of good performances. Shout out to Shavkat Rakhmonov, and shout out to Shitty Bang Bang getting that beautiful knockout. But pretty fun card overall. Any final thoughts before we close this show out?
Yeah, I would give this card a 6.5 out of 10. It was a solid card. It was very solid. Main card was great. I mean, the opener was very entertaining, and you got to see it was a very prospect based fight night. And the thing is, sometimes I get more excited for prospects than I do with, big fights. So I was pretty impressed with the card. I was very excited. And honestly, watching these fight nights, people should definitely, focus and invest in these fight nights because you'll see the future of the UFC in these fights. They're showcasing the future. And I think that people should definitely start investing more. Get ESPN Plus, bro. Get ESPN Plus. I promise you won't regret it.
Yeah, like you said, you're looking at the guys that are going to be champions, 2, 3 years from now. I mean, you look at Shavkat, a guy who's 15-0. He's going to be fighting in the for the ranking probably in his next fight, and by the end of the year, he's probably going to be top 8. Maybe next year or the year after that, he'll be fighting for a championship. You have somebody like Nick Maximov, a guy who's coming out of the Nick Diaz camp, a guy who has all the tools and all the support in the right camp to make himself a good fighter. We have a bunch of guys on this card. I mean, look at Brendan Allen, look at Bryan Battle. These guys are so young, and these are guys that could be future ranked fighters. These are guys before you see them. This was LeBron in high school. This is Dwayne Wade back in college. Like this is what you're seeing right now. Is seeing everybody before they're actually becoming huge stars. So beautiful point made, man. These fight nights are great for just showcasing the young talent. And if you want to be a little bit ahead of the curve, make sure you check out these fight nights, man. Like I said, you saw 7 finishes. We had a beautiful fight of the night, 15-second knockout, spinning heel kick. You really can't ask for much more on a fight night. You get fights one night every week, if you're not counting Bellator, PFL, and the locals. But I love what I'm getting from UFC, man, overall. But overall, man, thanks for joining me tonight. Everybody who's watching, there's still a couple people in here. Appreciate you joining us this late. Make sure you hit that like button on the way out if you haven't already. And if you didn't like what you see, let me know in the comments what you didn't like so that way we can make some changes. It's a show for everybody who's watching. So make sure you guys let me know if there's something that you want us to talk about. Just let us know. We're here for you guys. We are people of the people, and we're here for you. So, as always, from the boy Johan Blanco and myself, Johnathan, aka Three Piece Combo. Thank you guys for checking out the Three Piece Combo MMA Show. Thanks to my boy, Mr. Royal A. Shepherd, for the donations tonight, my man. I really do appreciate that. Appreciate you watching out for so late. I know your boy Jonah is also out here as well, so appreciate you. checking it out. And my boy Elder Assassin, you're always out here on these fight videos. I appreciate you as well. And everybody else who's watching post game and after this is done recording, thank you for checking this out all the way till the end. Make sure, like I said, hit that like button and subscribe. And until next time,